What's going on, YouTube? I had the pleasure of interviewing Zain Jan. He is one of the largest solar company owners in the United States. This guy started as a salesperson. From sales, he started his own company, and that company grew and grew and grew to a point where he's now doing $300 million a year in revenue in his solar business. Now, I love interviewing entrepreneurs and seeing how they got to become top of the line in their specific niches, and his story is absolutely insane. You're gonna wanna hear it. It gives us the prototype on how you can start your journey from having nothing, living with your parents, having no money, to getting to a place where you own one of the largest companies in whatever niche you want it to be in the United States. So watch this video and see what his traits are, what things ring true to you, and if you can find qualities that he exhibits in your own self. Before we get into that, just make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel so that you can see more of this awesome content. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Zain. What's cracking, YouTube? Jamil Damji here, and I'm with my buddy Zain Jan. If you have not seen this guy on social media, you're probably not on social media. He is the king. And when I say this, I mean it. He should be crowned right now. He is the king of solar. I have researched and witnessed time and time again how he has just outpaced everybody in the industry. He's outpaced his competition. He's running laps around his competition. So if you've ever wanted to know what it takes to build a 10-figure company, you're going to want to watch this right to the end, because my man Zain over here has the goods. Zain, what's cracking, bro? Nice to see you.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate all the kind words. I'm excited to be here and excited to share my story with you.
Awesome, man. Well, first, I want to just address the elephant in the room. We're a couple of brown guys who did it, dude. Congrats. High five, high five. You know, it's funny because what, you were supposed to be a doctor or what? What was
well, dude, yeah. So I grew up with the same exact thing I'm sure you did, which is I have to be a doctor, I got to be an engineer, I got to be a lawyer, I got to be something, and probably that order. I think their priority was doctor, yep, and then it was like engineer. And then it's like, yeah, dude, you could go to business, and then maybe a lawyer or something like that.
Lawyer's like bottom of the rung. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
attorney.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I went through that, but I didn't grow up with much. My dad was a taxi driver. My mom worked in retail stores like Marshalls and layaway and back stores and whatnot. So yeah, I kind of come from humble beginnings, but I wasn't necessarily an academic. I didn't resonate with school. It didn't make sense for me. I was always good enough to be able to get by and move from one grade to the other. I did my fair share of summer school and things like that. But what was interesting was, I realized this at a young age, was I actually, if I liked a concept or I liked something I was learning, I literally would go in and I'd get 100% on all those tests. So for example, I remember being in high school, I joined algebra for the first time. It was either 8th grade or 9th grade. And I would get 100%. I would run laps around the entire class. It would take me 5 minutes to complete a test because I just understood it. I liked it. And for some reason, I felt like I could apply myself there. But then I would go to something like chemistry, and I was like, this makes no sense to me. I'm not interested. I don't want to wear this lab coat. This is stupid. And I would fail and flunk all my classes. Right. So yeah, I'm a regular kid. I grew up in a pretty I guess you could say below average income household. I grew up with two parents who wanted me to be successful and go out there and get a typical, academic profession. And it was just never my game. At 18, I very luckily stumbled upon I guess you could say an opportunity to get into a state school. It wasn't something I was meant to do. I was actually, if you looked at my grades, it made no sense how I got into that school because I was bound for like a community college at best. And I told myself, there's nothing wrong with community college, but I'm just not going to do that. Like I didn't see the point of going there. Right. But at a young age, my mom had a stroke. That was a massive catastrophic event for me, and it caused me to basically say, I got to go to school for my mom. Like, it's not for me. If my mom was fine, I probably wouldn't have gone that route. But because she went into a coma, and when she came out, like, her wish was like to see me going to school, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing.
That's so hard. It's so hard because it's like you're like, Mom, I love you so much, and she's like, go to school. You're like, I don't want to, but for you, I will.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
How is
So
she though? Is she okay? Did she
fine.
recover?
Yeah. Perfect. I
Praise
mean,
God. Praise God.
it was a 2 to 3 year period where she was in recovery,
Yeah.
basically being in the hospital and rehab for a few years. So it was definitely a big deal. But anyways, moved on from that and kind of just realized I have to go to school for her. So how am I going to get in? I don't want to go to a dumb school. I don't want to go to a school where I feel like I'm just wasting my time and around a bunch of people who I just like didn't want to be around. So I said, okay. I'm gonna go to a school where I could kind of kill two birds with one stone. I want to party. I like partying at that time. I want to be a part of this kind of, I guess you could say, college nightlife
Yeah,
lifestyle.
the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be a part of the experience, but I got to get enough to a good enough school where they actually have those. Because if you go to like your local community college, there ain't no experience there. You don't have dorms. You don't have that
Yeah.
setup.
Right.
It's
The
you know,
girls are missing teeth. You ain't trying to,
yeah, exactly. So, anyways, I found a school called the University of Rhode Island,
Okay.
and it required a 3.5 GPA. I probably had a 2.1 at the time. So I said the only way I'm going to get in is I have to ace the SATs, and then I have to go out there and I have to write an unbelievable essay and basically sell them on accepting me.
Okay.
I got an unbelievable score, like a Northeastern University, potentially even Ivy League score on my SAT,
Congrats.
simply by just applying myself and saying I'm doing it for this reason. And then I ended up writing a very persuasive essay on why they should choose me, and I went very deep in my story, and somehow I got in. So I don't want to go deep into my college story because it was short lived. It was a few years, and I dropped out. But I essentially went there. I partied a ton. I turned that partying into a business. I promoted bars and nightclubs. I did some real estate. So I would go out there and I would actually get people in leases because after the first year of campus, everyone would move off campus with their buddies. They'd get a house off of campus, and that's where they would throw parties. So I got into sororities and fraternities. I started working with both groups and helping them get housing and stuff like that. And then shortly after, I was like, I'm bored. I don't really like doing this. I'm making money. I was making six figures in college. So I started making real money, and I'd never made that type of money before, enough to send some money back home to my parents. And then around 19 to 20 years old, I made the decision to drop out because I got a phone call from a friend. He's like, we're going to do this thing. It sounds really scrappy. It's called door-to-door solar sales, but I made 20 grand last week. You should come join me. So
Wow.
I did some diligence. I looked into the industry. I found a video with Warren Buffett where he said the largest transformation of wealth in history is going to be in the deregulation of energy. And that, when I watched that, I started studying into his investments, and I saw he had stuff going on with different solar farms and solar companies. He was investing in the solar space. And at that time, actually, there was a headline, and I think it was a Time magazine article with Elon Musk and Warren Buffett clashing heads because Elon was trying to go on solar, and Warren owned some of the biggest utilities in Nevada with just regular fossil fuel electricity. And he was trying to inhibit and prevent Elon from doing that so he could take it on. So I saw that and I was like, you got two billionaires going at it. They're fighting for a very similar thing. It's energy, it's power. Solar makes sense. The US has massively dropped the cost of solar. Back in I think in the 1950s, the US acquired the first solar cells ever from a company called Bell Labs. The US government bought it. Since then, there's been very, very little development in the technology, but the cost of the technology has gone from, at the time, we measure it in something called watts, from $100 a watt to now it's like it's between $3 and $4 a watt.
Wow. Wow.
So
So
the
it's like
price,
what happened to the microwave or the VCR. It came out, it
yeah,
was super expensive, and then people figured out how to make it
yeah.
cheaper. Yeah.
And it's gone down almost 90% since 2009 to
Okay.
today.
And what has
So
that done to the
just
industry? Did it explode the industry because the cost came
Yeah,
down
yeah.
so
Well,
much?
the cost came down, but we had a company called Solar City, which turned into Tesla, which was really pioneering the way. Elon's cousin started it. Elon was, I believe, he was a chairman of the company. I worked at that company as a salesperson,
Okay.
became the top salesperson there. That was really my intro into the industry, and they paved the way through it because they invented a finance product for the space where they said people aren't going to want to spend $30,000 or $40,000 out of pocket to get this thing that's going to get them, a return on investment in 6 or 7 years. It's just not feasible for your average American homeowner who's paycheck to paycheck. But what are they willing to do? Well, their biggest issue right now is they have rising utility costs. Most homeowners, if you talk to them, they are not happy about their utility bill. It's like that one thing that they have to pay every month, but you never hear someone like excited about their utility company or impressed with the service of their utility company. It's almost always a negative response to their utility company.
Right.
That company did was they created a product called a PPA. It stands for Power Production Agreement. And what that basically means is they created a finance product where it's essentially like a lease for 25 years, where they buy the asset, they get a 30% federal tax credit because they buy the asset. So the company buys the asset. They then lease it to the homeowner. And the way they pitch it to the homeowner is right now you're paying per kilowatt hour to get your power every single month. We're just going to charge you the same exact thing per kilowatt hour, except our cost is going to be 30 to 50% lower. Right. So you're day one going to be paying less money to go solar. You got to pay us $0 up front.
And then they just add a lease fee. So it's like you pay for the power, which is 50% less. And then you have that lease fee tagged on, which is still going to be less than the power bill.
Yeah, exactly. It's just baked into one payment. Yep. So what they're seeing is I'm paying, $150 right now to my power company. I'm paying $115 for my solar, all in. Cool. I'm saving some money. It's a good, it's a good thing. I'm adding it to my house. And then people usually want to get it because they want to be green and they want to do the right thing, but no one wants to spend their money doing that. So getting it at a lower cost is kind of a no-brainer. And what that did to the solar market is it just exponentially grew. Like everyone started buying these things because they were like, well, I don't have to pay for it. And what was genius about it was these solar companies that were owning these assets, they can sell the asset because now imagine they have all these contracts that are pretty much as solid as gold when it comes to someone paying it. There's a less than 1% default rate because we could just turn off your solar system and now you're paying higher rate to your utility and you need power, right? So it's a very solid asset and they get a 30% credit from the government for it. So what they're able to do today, for example, is they're able to take a $40,000 system, they're able to get a $12,000 credit from the government, and they're able to sell that tax write-off and those tax incentives to another company or to another fund. So they package those things up and sell them to some big funds, and they get to retain the asset and collect that monthly residual kind of income for the next 25 years. So it's a good.
At the end of 25 years, who gets the equipment? Who does that belong to? The finance company or the homeowner?
So technically, the finance company owns it and they can take it off. But after 25 years, it's such a long point that the fair market value of that technology is probably going to be really low. We haven't seen a full 25-year cycle of this product yet because it was really launched in like 08, 09 at this point. But most likely, they're just going to leave it there. They're not going to keep billing and they're just going to leave it there because there isn't a lot of resale value in that asset today. It's not really like a second.
Essentially, that homeowner can just keep using it. And then they basically are just getting.
So we don't really know, again, because the technology has improved over the last decade. We don't know how long it'll last. We think it'll efficiently produce at least 50% of what it does for at least the next 35 to 40 years, but some say that it could go up to 50 years, but we just don't have the accurate data yet to say that. So yeah, hypothetically for the next 25 years, they're going to avoid paying so much to the utility. What's crazy is we lock them into a rate over the next 25 years and their utility rates go up every single year. So day one, their savings might be 20 or 30%, but their savings in year 10 or year 15 might be like 90%.
Right.
So it's a great product today, but it's a great product long term, and it's kind of a win-win. So that blew up the industry, and that's kind of how I got in. I was just selling that product.
So what made you decide, as a salesperson at a really large company that ends up getting acquired and becoming, going to the moon? You're there now. You understand the ropes. You understand the business. You're the top salesperson, so you know that you can bring in business. What makes you decide to take off the employee hat and put on the entrepreneur hat and take that leap? Because I imagine you had to set up infrastructure, supply chain. You had to figure out installation. You had to figure out so many details. How did you make that leap?
Yeah. So first I was doing it there at Solar City. They were basically making the transition into Tesla. And because Tesla has so many leads, essentially, of people who buy Teslas, they wanted to turn their business model into you buy a Tesla and then you get a solar system. And because they had so much demand with solar, they started having talks about just shutting direct sales there. They're like, why even bother with all these salespeople and these massive commissions? Because it's no secret that solar salespeople make a lot of
A lot of
money
money. Yeah.
relative to other industries. You have, tons of people in their second year in solar making over $1 million, and they've never sold anything before. So, anyways, I was at that company and I saw them talking about that. And then at the same time, I had a guy who had basically built a startup reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm selling my company. I'm selling my share in my company, and I'm going to start something brand new. And I'd love for you to be a part of it, and I'd love for you to kind of lead the sales side of the business." So at that time, I was young. I didn't really have much business experience other than sales,
Yep.
but I felt like I had a good enough grasp of how they did it at Solar City because truthfully, I didn't really have this massive ambition to be this entrepreneur at that time. It was more of I wanted to do sales at Solar City, and I actually had this vision of, hey, one day, if I just keep moving up the ranks here, I stay the top salesperson, I'm going to get so much attention from the executives at the company that maybe I could become a C-level member at
Right.
Solar City. I could earn
Right.
stock,
Like
and that's my
chief
path
business development officer or something of that
or
nature. Where you,
something. Yeah, and
yeah,
you get
yeah,
stock, and I think
yeah,
the chief revenue officer there made over $100 million in stock. So I was like, great, this might convert into Tesla stock.
sure.
That's kind of my dream. And then as I started hearing about their plans, I was like, I don't know how possible this is going to be. And I get this opportunity, and I'm like, you know what? It's the best time to do it. It's a big risk because at the time I was in Massachusetts. I was based out of Boston.
And
That's
how much were you making
well.
a year as a
Uh,
salesperson?
Listen, so at the time I was probably making $250,000, but today, in like today's solar dollars, I would have been making a few million a year because of how much the compensation plan has changed in the industry.
Wow, wow.
Because at the time we were making literally like maybe 10% of what we make today as solar commissions for sales reps.
So that was a
So
big risk for you. You must have like that decision, every part of your physiology, like the survival mechanisms in our body that, tell us, oh, Zain, you're making a big mistake here. You should just
yeah,
go be a part of Tesla's sales team. This is the safe thing for you to do. What would mom and dad want you to do? Continue on make sure you keep the gravy train coming. And then something inspired you inside. Like, what was that drive?
I mean, listen, I was 20 years old at the time, just making crazy money for that age, especially
Yeah,
especially when you come from no money. Like my parents never made over 30 grand a year.
yeah,
So this was just a very big paradigm shift for me that I almost felt like I had nothing to lose. And
yeah.
I kind of felt invincible. I'm sure you felt this, but whenever a young entrepreneur makes their first dollars, you feel like nothing's ever going to go wrong and ever again. You're like, you made it. You feel like you're going to be good forever and you're unstoppable and you're invincible. And when you learn sales, you start to really believe yourself and you start to look at yourself and say, well, as long as I can sell, there's always going to be a product to sell.
Right.
So as long as I'm good at sales, I'll always be able to make money somewhere. So I kind of had that mentality a little bit. And I said, I might regret leaving, but what I'm going to regret a lot more is not doing this and taking this leap. And what was crazy is we were going to move to California, do a startup. I had to knock doors. I was going to be the first salesperson starting there. And I'd never sold a single solar deal in California. And solar is very market based. So how you sell in Boston isn't how you sell in Los Angeles.
Okay.
There are two completely different pitches and different products, really.
Right.
So my first time ever going to California was to go start that company. I didn't visit it. I didn't check it out. I found a lease of an apartment in Walnut Creek, California, which is in the Bay Area. I got a lease there. I set everything up from Boston. I got a few of my friends to join me and be sales reps, and we got in a car and I literally drove to California for the first time ever entering the state.
Wow.
So we enter the state. It's like me and probably 4 or 5 people that I know that I've kind of brought out with me. I've pitched them on the vision of we're going to California, the birthplace of startups. We're going to San Francisco. This is where every company started and founded in Silicon Valley. I kind of pitched them on this big idea and dream without really knowing what's going to happen. And I say, let's start. And I won't get too deep into the details of that startup, but long story short, we were producing about $25 million a year within our second year of being in business. We grew rapidly. We hired tons of staff. I got promoted to becoming the chief revenue officer of that business and started building it. And as that business started growing, I started really learning about the other side of the business. Because remember, I came in as just a salesperson. Now I became an executive. Now I'm responsible for people. And now I'm learning about, well, how does manufacturing work? How does financing work in the space? How does the technology infrastructure work? How do you not just sell a deal, but how do you fulfill upon it? And that requires a lot of moving parts in solar. It's not just like moving this contract to that contract. It's once you get a contract signed and financed, there's so many different parts of the process just to get that thing installed and activated. You have to deal with inspections, permitting, all of these things.
Right.
And as an installation company, we have to do those functions.
Right.
So I started learning about it. And as that company got bigger, I had a close relationship with the CEO of that business. And he was kind of content with where the business was at and with where it was going. And I disagreed with a lot of his decisions versus where I wanted to go. And now keep in mind, my chief executive officer is in his 40s and I'm in my early 20s.
Right.
So we kind of also are at different stages in life. Now, at the time, I thought it was just a difference in age, but really it just came down to mentality. I was this go, go, go entrepreneur, young, hungry hustler. And he was more of, I got kids, just want to chill, want to kind of keep building this thing. I want to be a California company. I don't care about this national idea or this global idea. So we kept just butting heads. And after almost 4 years, I made a decision where I basically said, the next biggest thing I'm going to regret is just staying here and allowing this to keep happening. Because at the end of the day, he had hierarchy over me, and I would bring all these ideas to the table, and it was just like, no, we can't do that, or we're not ready for that, or I'm not trying to expand, or that's too risky. And I had made enough money at this point, but more importantly, I had built enough connections. Like I actually started to learn about the industry and meet all these people at these other companies. And I had the personal confidence because I was producing and working on the business every day that I could just do this on my own. Like I didn't need help. So long story short, I made a very rapid, quick decision. We started a company called Better Earth. When I say we, I brought along some people that I had worked with over the past couple of years. Same exact thing. I pitched them on the idea of, I know you guys might have followed me the first time. I know we're here right now, and I know this seems like everything's going really good, and I seem moronic to give up what I'm doing. I'm giving up equity. I'm giving up a C-level position. I'm giving up a nice salary, giving up all these things. But I believe in what we're doing, and I feel so confident that we can be 10 times bigger in a fraction of the time. Just believe in me. And luckily, I was a good salesman there, and I had a huge group of people that believed in me, and we started a company. Now, day one, I don't really call my current company Better Earth. I don't really call it like a startup at the beginning because I had all this experience. I had all these people. I had these sales guys. I had so much going for me. So day one, I knew I couldn't like just get a bunch of warehouses and trucks and vehicles and employees overnight, but I knew I had the sales to do that. So what I did was I found another installation company. I partnered up with them and I said, we'll be the sales engine. You be the install engine. We're two separate entities. You pay me this rate. I'll handle all the economics on my side and I'll make a margin based off of that. So I onboarded over 100 sales reps day one. We absolutely like shattered solar industry records. 3 to 4 months in, I get a call from an installer that I used to work with as a subcontractor. And he said, Zane, I want to sell you my business. I have these install crews. I'm in California. I'm licensed. I have materials. I have trucks. I have credit lines. I have everything you need. And we've been in business for 4 to 5 years at that time. I said, okay. I'm only between 3 and 4 months in business at that time. I said, I'll do you one better. It was like, I'm a brand new business. I'm doing all these sales. I have a lot of cash that's due coming in. I don't have enough cash to be able to just go and straight up buy you for millions of dollars overnight, nor do I think that's the best decision for me. But what I am willing to do is buy your company through a stock deal where you own a smaller piece of my company. And the one thing I can promise you is we're going to be worth 100 times what you'll ever be worth.
So you did like some terms. You bought it on seller finance.
Correct. Essentially, right? I basically broke it down and when I said,
my boy Pace is going to love this. You bought a solar installation company on seller finance. How much did you have to put down?
Zero, literally zero.
I love it, dude.
Yeah. So I basically said to him, I said, listen, dude, you're doing all this. You can keep making this money that you're making, or partner up with a guy like me. Now, here's the thing. We were already doing probably 10x the sales that he was doing.
Yeah.
We were just with a massive install company partnered up. So just by me coming over, we had the sales to literally 10x the business.
Right.
So again, if you asked anyone who is, a CFO analytical guy, if it's a good deal for that guy, absolutely not. He has a business, he has employees, he has assets, he has money in the bank. He's got, proven track record. We're a brand new sales organization with zero value other than sales at that point. But he was smart about it because he knew me. We had a working relationship before, and he saw the volume that we could bring. And he just was kind of at a point where he was like, I need someone else to run this show. I'm just not the guy to scale this thing to the moon.
Yeah.
So anyways, made a deal with him. Basically said, we're going to give you a small piece of this entity. It's going to be worth way more than what you're worth right now, and it's going to be a great return on investment for you.
What was he worth at that point? Would you say?
His company was doing, if I'm not mistaken, they were probably doing 15 to 20 million dollars a year and making like $1 million something a year.
Okay, so
like,
maybe they were worth like 8 mil.
Maybe like 8 to 10. Yeah, it was small.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, but again, I pitched him on what if we're worth $1 billion and you have a piece of that. That's going to be a lot more, right. And you don't have to go through all the motions of scaling that up.
Right.
So, anyways, we made a deal. It probably took us from month 4 to month 9 to like legally get it done because there was a lot of contractual stuff going back and forth with lawyers, making sure we really did everything right. Then when we bought the company, we ran into our next major hurdle because we acquired this company and we're now working with this large national installer who we were giving all this volume to.
Right.
And this guy's doing like $500 million a year. So he's massive. Today, I think he's the second or the first largest solar company in the US. He's grown massively since then. This guy's an absolute shark. But we go to now start our install company and move this volume, and he just cuts off our pipeline. So we have all this pipeline that's like either installed or about to get installed. And he goes, I'm going to install all this, but I ain't paying you guys your fee. So we are now hit with like millions of dollars of losses just because we made this transaction, and he's holding on to the cash. And I think until today, our lawsuit is open with them to collect that money.
Wow, he just straight up jacked you. He was just like, yeah. Oh, you're gonna do this yourself. All right, I'm gonna keep a few $1 million and make it hurt, and you're gonna chase me for it. So was that your biggest kick in the kneecaps in this entire thing, or did you have another?
Man, I thought at the time I've had way more after that and at different levels, but at the time it was devastating because it was really like it could put us out of business 100%. Like I remember there was times where we had $1 million in the account, and there was times where we had $5,000 in the account because of those types of things. Right. All this money just held up. We have to pay out sales reps still, or if we don't pay out our sales reps, they get mad at us and they blame us. So his strategy was, I'm going to take all this money out to them, and then I'm just going to go right to their sales reps and tell them, oh, if you want to get paid this money, you just onboard with us.
And did he get any of your people?
Like 1 or 2%, maybe, like a very small portion, which, comes down to loyalty, right? Like if you build a strong team and you train them and you help them get to where they are, those types of situations, you'll usually be safe if you have the right team.
Have you seen this dude out in the world at all since this happened?
I haven't one-on-one. I'd love to kick him in the teeth, but what's crazy is I look at that as a huge thing.
Yeah. I
had a buddy that this just happened to with the same exact company that I was dealing with. He was their largest sales organization, except he was much bigger than we were at that point, and he's owed somewhere in the ballpark of $40 to $50 million from that company.
Goodness. I mean, this is just straight up fraud. You can't just steal from people.
Well, see, it's fraud, but when you're a company of that scale and you are owning the contract, you can, in your language, basically delay payments, right? You could basically be like, well, we think you guys did some things here, and we think you did this with this customer, so we're going to hold this to protect ourselves, and we'll pay you out long term. And that turns into a 4 or 5 year lawsuit, and it's just a mess, right? He's basically just holding that money to try to screw you and bleed you out. So anyways, we have this huge kind of catastrophic event happen, but we keep moving forward from it. Now our next problem becomes we figured it out. We've now transitioned. We're doing volume. We're installing it. Now we grew an install company that was like here to here, and we have all these sales in, but now we have to grow the operations of it. So now we got to acquire more warehouses, hire more employees, do all these things, and it was a rapid thing. Like we went, I think I think that installer had maybe done 10 to 15 million dollars in revenue the prior year. Our first year owning them, we did 66. So, we 6x them, and they just weren't ready to handle that with their own staff. So we had to jump in and basically make it work and make it happen. I brought on a COO who had built a massive company in the industry. He built a top 5 installer in the industry. I brought him in. I brought other great talent that were significantly smarter than me, had a lot more experience, and said, listen, I have the ability to get known in our industry. I have the ability to bring sales volume. I have the ability to recruit the best operational talent, but I need you guys to help me operate this thing because I can't do it with our current team. We need a lot more talented people that have done this before. So I just went on a recruiting wave of hiring unbelievable talent from other large companies in the space. Then year 2 as an installer, we went from 66 million to 149 million. So we had another big jump. We did it a little bit more stably. And then year 3 was like our most stable year where we basically said, let's slow down growth a little bit, to tighten up profitability, make sure that our systems are dialed in and our experience is really good. So we did just shy of $200 million in our third year in business. And we did it in a more profitable manner, in a more efficient manner, et cetera. So now we're in the 4th year of the business, and I'm kind of in a position where we have the things dialed in. We have a lot of stuff right. We know how to operationally do it. We've been through so many, failures and mistakes and stuff like that. And now we're at a point where I think we can exponentially scale, but we can do it in a much healthier, more profitable way. So today, the business, we just got ranked last quarter officially the 10th largest installer in the United States. There's over 50,000 companies that install solar across the United States. So it was a pretty hard feat to have. Tesla today, I think, is number 5 on that list. Wow. So we're like not far from where they are. Now, what's crazy is the 9 companies ahead of us, average age in business is 18 years. The next youngest is 9 years, and we've done it in 4. So our speed to get to that top 10 has also been pretty remarkable because we're not like an e-commerce business. We're not an online business where, it's a little bit maybe easier to scale your numbers. Here we have to hire employees, electricians, construction workers, engineers, designers, warehouses. Like there's a whole process to being able to scale, and it's very capital intensive. I think probably the most impressive stat that we have amongst all of that stuff is we did it with 0 investors. That was completely done with a little capital at the beginning and essentially cash flowing the business and just ensuring profitability by being really tight and knowing where every dollar is going at every minute.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And, I did something very similar at Keegley. Our numbers aren't, where you are. We, in terms of our, volume and stuff, we're the highest volume wholesaler in the country, and we're franchised in nationally as well. But looking at the sheer volume of sales and then logistics that are involved in what you had to do, just how much money you'd be writing checks for every single month, I'm sure that got pretty stressful at times. And as the founder, still is. Yeah.
I mean, what's crazy is you think it gets less stressful, and I don't know, maybe it's a different experience for others. You think it gets less stressful as you get bigger because it seems more stabilized. For me, I think it's much more stressful because, I could care less about myself. It's more about, I went from when you're starting, you're like a little speedboat, and you're nimble, you're agile. There's not a lot of people on there, and whatever, if it stops, it stops. Now you're running a cruise ship. Yeah. And you have all these people on board, and you're responsible for all of these people. Right. And any wrong decision you make, doing something wrong, accounting for something that like you haven't actually received, going from a high sales month to a little bit of a lower sales month, these numbers are very, very big, and they impact all of the people there. So we have to be very, very close to the business. And until today, like I would say, I'm in my most stressful period I've ever been in the business. Like a lot of people think just startup phase day one was hard. At that time, I thought that was going to be my hardest times. I think today I'm probably facing some of the biggest challenges I have, but I welcome them and I accept them because I know like I'm just learning. Like I'm learning how to be an entrepreneur at this scale. And I know I'm sure when we reach $1 billion, it's going to be the same exact thing. I'm going to be at that size and I'm going to be like, we're still learning and it's still hard. But a part of it for me is I used to do everything because I was excited about the result. I was excited about hitting a revenue number or a profit number or a size number in terms of how big we are in the nation. Today, I think my number one source of motivation is my effort put into the business and how much I learn from it. Like that's my number one source of motivation. When I can see other people grow, when we can hire more employees, when we can deliver a better customer experience on scale, when I see a customer message that's positive, like those types of things get me more excited than anything because I feel like we've kind of accomplished a little bit of the numbers. Now I'm at a point where it's like, I have to now deliver a product that's much better than my competitors and that's leaps and beyonds ahead because in my space, which I'm sure your space is the same, it's filled with so many people. I have
Right.
so many people in our space trying to do the same exact thing we're doing. And when you're in a space that's that competitive and you have so many people doing the same thing, it's like I wish I invented the iPhone, but I didn't. So I don't have some product where I'm not really competing with many people, or I'm only competing with 3 or 4 companies. Every day there's a new solar company that comes up
Right.
and I'm competing with new people. So the only way at my size to essentially be different and drive more consumers is to build an experience and a product that's leaps and bounds better than everyone else in my space.
Right.
And that's our full focus today. So that's what excites me. And like the last thing I'll say, and I kind of touched on it, was just effort. At my current, I guess you could say place in business, I've realized I do it because I like exerting the effort and I like being in the game and I like being in these crazy situations where it's very high pressure. And I've realized as much as I thought I would prefer maybe just being on a beach, checking my bank account and looking at it just go up and sitting there and being excited, internet money. I've realized it's not for me. Like I
Yeah.
actually like being in the fire. It's kind of fun.
I agree. I mean, I have been accused many times from my family that I will never retire, and I think they're right. I'm like you, wired this way. I think it's innate in people who end up doing something like this. It's a drive you have to actualize, and I don't think that it's possible for us to stop. But I want to touch on, the fact that you're in the most stressful part of your life and of your career, and it's important that you manage that, right? I'm sure that there's tools and techniques that you're using right now to personally mitigate your levels of stress, to make sure that you're keeping yourself healthy and level headed.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis to keep you in that real,
Yeah. So,
space?
um, I'd say number one, I need another game outside of business. I need some type of activity. So I like to play some sports. So I'll do like mixed martial arts. I do Muay Thai. I
Okay.
have a world class kind of champion who I spar with. So I'm
Awesome.
training with him. I spar with him, and that's really fun because when you're actually sparring, you're basically in a moment where you're thinking about nothing else. You're just
Right.
looking at your opponent, and my guy, he's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai trained guy, and he's a professional. He's like 6'5", and he looks like he's gonna kill me every time I see him. So when you're in that fight, it's like it's almost the only time I can get my mind off of everything else.
Yeah,
And
you're present.
the only time, he'll hit me with a punch or he'll hit me with a kick and it'll fucking hurt. It'll be very, very painful. I get a huge bruise after. It's fun because
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a different form of stress, but I need something else to be able to get that out. Also, I play a sport called paddle. It's kind of a mix between tennis and pickleball.
Okay.
I always call it the rich man's pickleball.
Okay.
It's a cool sport. You got glass around you. You're hitting the paddle. You play off the glass. It's a really cool thing that I recommend. So I like to play that pretty competitively with friends as well. So doing those types of activities get my mind off of this thing, believe it or not, and putting myself in like a different type of stress, you could say, is what keeps me up. And then last thing is, I really never understood this early on, but I probably understand it more than ever now. Um, Reading books and diving into information, for me specifically, being able to read books on other people's stories and history, is one of the most peaceful things for me to do. Because I actually get to read about other people and the feats that like they've achieved and the things that they've conquered. And I look at what I'm doing and I'm like, dude, this is normal. Like it almost just confirms that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
I'm probably not even playing at a level that I should be playing at. Like there's people like look at Alexander the Great, and I'm like, I did nothing. Like I have literally done nothing. I look at Julius Caesar, and I'm like, I've literally accomplished like 1% of what these people have done in their lifetimes, and I'd love to be able to do a lot more. So believe it or not, for me, reading about history and what other people's successes were and failures and triumphs motivates me a little bit, and it takes my mind a little bit off of the stresses of business and puts me in a place where I feel like I just want to flourish and I want to prosper a little bit because there's all these other people that have done it and they've done things that are significantly harder than me. Like for me today, I just read the book, which I recommend everyone does, the book about Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. He was followed by Walter for like 2 years and nothing was off limits. And he saw every move that Elon did. And I ask myself all the time, I'm like, you have a guy here that is, financially the most successful person on planet Earth, very famous and well known, very admired and respected, built probably of our time, is the most important human being, like of our time, of you and I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably not a single individual that's walked planet Earth that is doing more for Earth and history than him. And you read his failures in that book and all the stuff he goes through, and you're like, it is so easy for him to say, I don't want to do this. It is so like he could today just say, I'm leaving everything I do and I'm set, and the next 100 generations of Musks are set
Right.
forever. Yet he keeps putting himself into harder and harder situations. It's like he conquers something and then he finds something harder to go deal with because he just wants to do it. And I ask myself, is that maybe the purpose of life? Like, maybe a part of what makes us happy, at least for me as a man, like maybe a part of what makes me happy is being in the challenge.
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
It is beautiful to hear you say that, honestly, because I've seen, and especially for aspiring young entrepreneurs who are just getting started, the obstacle, the first obstacle, the fifth obstacle, the 10th obstacle is where the subconscious and your survival instincts start to kick in, and they start to tell you, the voice starts to come in and be like, this isn't for you, man. Go back to your W-2, go back to the comfort, you don't want to live life at a 10 out of 10. If you live life at a 10 out of 10, that means you need to experience a 1 out of 10. And we're scared to go to the ones out of 10s because those periods of the valley, the depth of the valley is sucky. It's terrible down there and it's too painful for us. So let's just live at a 5.
Yeah.
Let's just coast at a 5 and we'll just get right to the grave at a 5. It's perfect. And many people fall into that trap because it's easy. It's addictive, right? The comfort is addictive, but you've become addicted to the challenge. You've become addicted to the resistance. You have become addicted to the growth. And that is how you actualize. That's how you get to the highest version of what Zain Jan is supposed to be. Correct. And I truly believe that. What's the point in stopping, right? You got one shot.
And what's so exactly, you got one shot to make it count. Yeah. And everyone always says, but is there more important things to life and travel and this and that? And I understand that, right? Like at the end of the day, for me, I've found it's like I need to be first. And I think a lot of people look down upon the word selfish, but I think it's important to be selfish first, right? Like I think you should do what makes you happy truly and fulfills you. And for me, it happens to be going through pain and going through these things and and putting myself in struggling situations, because when you come out of it, it's like this high and this rush that you've never felt before. It's a drug you can't get through money, you can't get through buying a car. It's just a different type of feeling, right? And then I also believe family is extremely important too. Like I'm a huge believer in that. I talk to my mom and my dad almost every day. I'm always focused on that. I want to have tons of kids. I have no kids yet, but I want to have as many kids as I possibly can. I want to build a huge family and I want to do all these things. But I believe, number one, I can work my butt off and do all of those things still. I don't think I have to sacrifice those things. But number two, I think I'll be a much better role model and example for the people in my family if they see what I'm doing and they see what's possible and they see how hard it is. Because if they just see the win, if they just see, oh, we always get to go on vacation with dad and we always get to be in the nice car with dad and we just live in the nice house with dad, I know I'm probably setting them up for failure.
Right.
I'm probably going to put them in a position where they think that's normal and anything that's bad is catastrophic and they'll feel depressed by that.
Yeah, they won't be able to handle the challenge because they won't have built up the resilience or the affinity to bare minimum. I've lived bare minimum, and at times, I even tell my EA, put me in the Best Western. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I want to be on that. I want to be on that.
I have to do that
bed.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I have to do that sometimes because I have to go to some of our warehouse locations where I want to visit the team on the ground. And they're in places where the Best Western is the best hotel in that area.
Right.
And it's like you got to be there. And what I realize in those moments is like, as long as I have I need two things. I need a bed and I need an AC because I hate sleeping in the heat. Like it's just like the one thing that I can't handle.
What's your number? What's your AC number?
60, 64, 65.
Oh wow. I can't. I coast at 69, but I respect 65. I would happily handle a 65 room. I run hot too, so it's terrible to be in a room that's too hot.
Yeah. But as long as you have those things, it's like, for me, it's kind of whatever. Like, I have exotic cars and Rolls Royce, Lambo, all that stuff. And, again, I'm still fairly young. I'm 28, but I experienced enough financial success in the early 20s. And, I've traveled all across the world. I've been on private jets. I've been on mega yachts. Like I've done experiences and seen what's possible.
Yeah.
And I've come back to realize I used to be the type of person that would tell anyone, if you ask me in an interview, Zane, what do you think about people that say money isn't important or cars aren't important or blah, blah, blah. I would say, yeah, totally agree. They might not be important to you, but they're important to me. I love that stuff. I want money. It's cool. It's good to have it. So today my response has switched a little bit on it. It's switched to money is important as a resource to keep on going and to keep on creating and doing things. Mm-hmm. But for me today, it's like the first time in my life maybe over the last 1 to 2 years where I had this realization where I'm like, money spent on, watches, cars, where you live, all these things, it's fine if you have the means to do it, but it's pretty stupid. Like from a efficiency perspective,
right.
Your car is just going to get you from A to B. It doesn't matter if it's a Rolls Royce or a Honda Accord. It's just going to get you from A to B. So if you like those things, by all means, and you have the means to do it, do it. But what bothers me is I grew up inspired and motivated by that stuff. And I always thought that if you just have that stuff, you're 10 times happier. And when I got that stuff, you start to realize now I understand why people say materials aren't everything, at least the people that have experienced it, right? It's money is important, but money is important where you put it. For me, my number one investment is my business, right? That's where most of my money goes. It's it's not a flex where I live. It's not a flex to live on the ocean. It's not a flex to have these cars. It's a flex to say I hired hundreds of employees. It's a flex to say you're helping all these people. It's a flex to say you're contributing to the economy, right? Those things are way more important to me today. And I've gotten to a place where it's I lived a great life. I've done cool things. And now I'm at a point where it's just I don't see the point of buying useless things anymore. Now I'm just I as long as I'm working and I got an AC and I got a bed and I got some coffee, I got a cigar, I'm pumped.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
I love that. That's, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I have experienced the same thing. In my life, my first ride up the ladder was in my 20s. and I lost everything to nonsense, right? Like, just bad decisions with my money, buying too many vehicles, overexerting myself and overexpending myself in home purchases and whatnot. And when the market shifted, everything disappeared, right? I went to below ground zero. I was in the hole, and I had to
Yeah.
build myself out of that hole again. And so I understand, and because I've touched these things that you talk about too, the exotic cars and all of the things, the nice homes, the waterfront property, all that, I've touched it. And you know what? The dopamine rush lasts 3-4 days, and
Max.
then it's gone. And then all of a sudden it just becomes normal, and it just fades into reality. And you're like, wait, there is no happiness in things. There's
Yeah.
the only place you find happiness is inside, and that comes from living your purpose. And
Yeah.
so let me ask you, in wrapping this up, what is Zain Jan's purpose, and what's next?
Yeah, man, it's such an interesting question. It's evolved, and I've always told people such a big answer. I've always told people, and it's gonna sound crazy, but I want to build the largest company on planet Earth.
Good.
And when they come back to me, they say, "Well, Zan, that's crazy, that's wild," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it has nothing to do with the number of the largest company in the world. It has nothing to do with any type of income or something I buy with that money or whatever. It's all about, I believe I have an ability. I believe I was put on earth to utilize that ability. And I believe that if I work hard every single day of my life and I go through the challenges, there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to accomplish that.
Correct.
And it's like I'm either doing that, or it's like, yeah, I could just fuck off on my yacht or go to vacation. And it's like, you never read a history book that starts with like, well, Alexander the Great had this beautiful yacht, or he lived in this mansion, or man, you should have seen that F8 Ferrari he had. No, never starts with that, right? It's always about the hardships, the struggles, and then the triumph, right? It goes through all of these phases of life.
It's the
And I'm
hero's journey. It's the hero's journey.
just a journey. And if I'm willing to keep playing the game and I'm willing to continue to keep going, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do whatever it is I want. Now, again, like if I'm not number one, I'm not gonna be depressed, but why play the game if you're not gonna go after that? It's just the way I view it. And again, it's a part of that, like the sub product of building the biggest company, of course, is taking care of my family, taking care of my employees, donating to charity, helping out other people. Like, of course, that's just the natural subproduct. I've been doing those things as I've gone through my journey. It's almost like obvious for me. Like I have to do those things. If I'm making enough money, like why would I not help the people around me? Why would I not take care of people? It'd be a shame on me if I bought my first car instead of helping out my parents.
Right.
All of those things I've just naturally done. But I know all those things only get supported in larger, quantities if me and my purpose is going up. If I get bigger, those things get more support. If I get smaller, those things get less support. So as long as I'm doing that, all these other things will just be kind of taken care of naturally. And I'll give you one last thing. I got to experience the most life-changing trip of my life in 2023. I got invited. Actually, my company, we on every install we do, we donate a portion of our proceeds to a foundation that we are partnered in. It's a closed foundation. The owner of it is a guy named Hayes. He's a billionaire today. I met him at Solar City when he was the chief revenue officer. At the time, he was maybe worth 50 to 100 million because they had bought his company and he became the chief revenue officer there. But anyways, today he's a billionaire in the solar finance space, and he has a charity called Give Power. And what's so unique about this charity is they raise money, but the application of the money. So they actually go to third world villages and countries, places with literally the lowest of low. Like they don't have electricity, they don't have clean water, they die at age 35 on average, like the worst of the worst. They go to those places and they make a solar microgrid system to bring them electricity. They put a Wi-Fi set up like a Starlink or something of that nature to bring them Wi-Fi for the first time. They buy them mobile devices. They make a clean water filtration system to clean up their water. And most importantly, every single trip leaves with something that allows them to have an economic benefit in the future and make their own money so that they can sustain their growth. So I got every quarter my team donates here, and every quarter the team actually goes out and does the trip. So we take employees from the company, we go there, and then we build the things with them, with the locals there. So
Yeah,
you get to
man.
experience firsthand what
That's
it's
so
like.
cool.
So this time I went to Colombia, completely remote place, like literally nothing there on an island. We did it in collaboration with them and with Mr. Beast. So Mr. Beast's team came out, they put it on, I think it's 25 million views on YouTube right now on this
Wow.
Mr. Beast on the Give Power Colombia trek or something like that on YouTube. But anyways, we went out there and I was literally sleeping outside on a hammock with it raining and thunder on top of us for an entire week. You know, extreme heat conditions, doing labor all day, construction work, helping build up these structures, eating, mediocre food, living off of the land, fishing, like having to go to the bathroom outside. Our shower
Wow.
was the lake. You have to shower in the lake.
Wow.
Go take a shit, you got to go in the woods. Like it's that type of atmosphere and
Good,
environment.
dude.
And after doing that for a week, man, do you realize like we are spoiled motherfuckers? Like we
Yeah,
are.
man.
That's why I said a bed and an AC is like the biggest luxury in the world because then that's all I needed. I needed nothing else. If I could have a cold water, a bed, and an AC, I would have paid someone $1 million that week because of how much that meant to me, just having those little things. And then when you go there and you see all these kids, and it's like they don't have that stuff.
Right.
And they have an ear to ear smile on their face. And there was a kid that moved me. He said one thing. We asked him a question. We were in this little fire with all the localers on one of the last nights, and we're asking questions. And they asked us how America is. So I responded back and I said, I have a question for you guys. What do you guys think about the United States? And like, do you guys have this dream and this aspiration, like a lot of people in different countries do, of coming to the United States?
Yeah.
And they said, uh, no, we have zero aspirate. Like we would hate to leave where we live and our family and our friends. And they said, we heard from some people on past trips that people in the United States kill themselves.
Yeah.
And we were so shocked that people like do that. Like they were appalled by the idea of suicide. They thought that was insanity. They thought like crazy Americans, like they actually take their own life.
Wow. Wow.
So, anyways, I don't want to go too long into it, but it was
No, that
an
was,
inspiring moment for me, and it makes you realize
you think
everything.
about that from that perspective. They're like, life is so simple here. Life is so beautiful for us that the idea of taking our own life is completely like
Insanity.
it's insanity to me, right? And you think we've got all these creature comforts, we've got beds, ACs, cold water, we're sheltered from the elements, we have food at our fingertips. I want something, it's here in 20 minutes. Life is
Exactly.
so convenient, and then yet we have so much dissatisfaction, we have so much discontent, so much, we're so disconnected from each other. Yet when you go to a place like that and you see how the children interact and you see how the parents interact and how everybody is in the community, that their level of connection and their depth of their relationships is just so much richer than what we're accomplishing over here with our TikTok minds, and like we're literally in 30-second intervals of attention and then we're out, and it's sad, but it's also an opportunity for us in this country to evolve and to change and to be able to see, look, we've got so much here. It's our responsibility to continue that and to learn from it, to be able to see what in this culture do we enjoy that we can bring into our world so that we can live a fuller and more rich life. And then how do we take the comforts and how do we take the advantages that we have over here and use those so that we can go and do something great the way that you have.
Yeah.
Zain, I have to say, man, this has been one of the most enlightening conversations I've had. You are a phenomenal dude, man, and I'm proud to call you a buddy. I want to see you more. I want to hang out with you. I feel like we our stories align so much. You'd be interested one day when you and I are sitting down. I'll share my version of it, but very similar things. But you're 28 years old. I'm an old man, 45 now, and I'm really impressed, brother. I'm really impressed. And I wish you a tremendous amount of blessings. I wish you a tremendous amount of success out there. I firmly believe you will have the largest company in the world. I don't doubt it for a moment. When you put an intention like that, an action that's inspired the way that you move, it is impossible to fail. And whether that be when you're 60 years old, but God willing, it happens sooner than that. But when it does, bro, when it does, I will absolutely just cheer your name from every rooftop that I'm on.
I love
I
that, man.
believe in you, bro. I believe in you, and I know you're gonna do it. how do people reach out to you? How do people follow you? I know you're a busy guy. You're very popular on social media, but I'm sure people are going to watch this and they're going to want to continue following your journey. What's the best place for people to connect?
Yeah. So I have to do better on social media, but you can follow me at Zain Jan on Instagram is the best place for like more active content, or to DM me. And then YouTube, I'm going to be launching like fully my channel. I've done some stuff on the past there, but we haven't done too much there. But that's just Zain Jan on YouTube, and you could find me there and you could subscribe. And I got a really cool life story video coming out that's going to be like my first release that we're putting out there. It's fully filmed and probably going to be ready to go in the next week or two. So excited to get active there. But yeah, man, I appreciate you bringing me onto your platform. Very excited to build a relationship and a friendship with you over time. And yeah, man, if you're ever in Miami, let's definitely get some cigars. So
awesome. I'm with it. All right, folks. If you guys like this and you like stories like this, do me a favor, leave Zain a comment. This is a guy who's been able to literally create one of the most incredible companies, and he did it with his own hands. He built this from the ground up, and the story, the pivots, the way that his mind works is an example for all of us to take and put into our own lives. So if you like this, leave him a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Zain, and I hope that you understood that you don't need a rich dad, you don't need an Ivy League education to become one of America's best in business. What you really need is a great idea and consistency. Consistency. And again, Zain's idea wasn't original. Solar has been around forever, but what he did is he found an opportunity in the marketplace and then just remained consistent. He dreamed big and he hit his target, and I hope you can do the same as well. Now guys, make sure you watch this video because it's gonna tickle your fancies. And click here to subscribe.